The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft beep of the monitor and the occasional rustle of the nurse's shoes against the linoleum floor. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting slanted stripes across Grandma's pale, lined face. I sat beside her, holding her frail hand in mine, feeling every slight tremor, every uneven heartbeat. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of her years had condensed into this fragile, solemn presence. My parents hovered by the door, their expressions carefully neutral, but I could feel the tension radiating off them in waves. They spoke softly to each other, their voices a mixture of urgency and calmness that didn't reach me. I realized with a sudden sinking that they weren't here purely out of love. There was a weight to their presence, a purpose beyond grief, though I couldn't yet name it. "Sweetheart," Grandma croaked, her voice weaker than I expected. "Come closer." I leaned in, brushing a loose strand of hair from her forehead. Her eyes, sharp and alert despite her frailties, searched mine. "I know what you're thinking," she whispered, a faint smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. "They don't see the world the way I do. Don't let them cloud your heart even now." I frowned, confused, but she only gave a small, knowing nod. She squeezed my hand, and the gesture, though tiny, carried a lifetime of unspoken messages. She always had a way of making everything profound without saying much at all. My mom cleared her throat, breaking the fragile bubble of intimacy I had with Grandma. "Mom, rest now. The lawyer will come later to—" "No." Grandma's voice, though soft, carried an unshakable authority. "Not yet. I want her to hear this first." She nodded at me. My chest tightened. I knew, even before she spoke, that what she was about to share mattered more than anything I had ever been allowed to know. The minutes dragged. I watched my father pace near the window, glancing at his watch more than he looked at my grandmother. Every glance, every movement felt calculated, like he was measuring the hours against some invisible ledger. My mom's fingers drummed nervously on the edge of the bedside table, betraying an impatience she couldn't disguise. I need you to promise me something," Grandma whispered, her grip tightening. "Promise me you'll always question what they tell you, even when it seems final." I nodded, tears pricking my eyes, and she smiled faintly. "Good. That's all I ask." She closed her eyes for a long moment, and I wondered if it was just to rest, or if she was preparing herself for something greater, something beyond this room. I could feel the gravity in the air, the unspoken, almost sacred weight of her impending death. My parents' whispers grew louder, more urgent, though still carefully restrained. I caught fragments, "the will make short," and "tonight before it's too late." I turned sharply, but their eyes avoided mine. I felt a strange mix of fear and anger stir inside me, a warning my grandmother had always taught me to heed. When Grandma finally opened her eyes, they gleamed with clarity. "They think this is the end of their control," she said softly, almost to herself. "But it's never that simple, is it?" "No, Grandma," I whispered. "It's never that simple." She reached up with trembling hands and brushed my cheek, a gesture of both farewell and reassurance. In that moment, I realized the fragile, fleeting nature of life, and yet, beneath it, the resilience that comes with knowledge, with truth. Whatever my parents were planning, I felt certain that Grandma had already left clues, small but vital, like seeds buried in the soil, waiting for me to uncover them. And as the shadows lengthened across the room, I made a silent vow. I would honor her in the only way that mattered, not by following blindly, but by seeing through the veils, by understanding what she had fought so hard to protect. Outside, my parents' voices rose slightly, but I didn't turn. My gaze stayed on my grandmother, and in that quiet, trembling moment, I knew that everything was about to change. The lawyer arrived just as the afternoon light was fading into the golden haze of early evening. His briefcase clicked against the linoleum floor as he entered, a solemn figure in a dark suit. Grandma, propped up slightly in her bed, gave him a small, tired smile. My parents immediately straightened, their faces carefully composed, though there was a subtle tension in the tight lines around their mouths. "I'll need everyone to sit," the lawyer said, voice calm but authoritative. He placed a manila envelope on the bedside table, then reached into his briefcase and produced a second one, slightly thicker, sealed with a wax stamp. 2 envelopes, I asked, my curiosity pricking at me. The lawyer glanced at my parents, who exchanged a brief, almost imperceptible look. My mother's hand twitched toward the first envelope, as if claiming it before it could speak. Yes, the lawyer said carefully. One contains the final, legally amended version. The other contains an alternative draft, which your grandmother asked to remain unopened unless certain conditions were met. My heart thudded. I had an inkling of what that meant. Grandma had always been secretive, protective of her true intentions. She had mentioned hidden letters before, but I had never expected to see one so soon, or under circumstances so raw. My father cleared his throat. We'll just go with the official one, he said smoothly. His eyes, however, flicked nervously to the second envelope. Grandma's gaze met mine, sharp and deliberate. Do not be so hasty, she whispered. Sometimes the truth is buried where you least expect it. I bit my lip, sensing the undercurrent of tension that my parents were desperate to hide. The lawyer opened the first envelope, pulling out a single sheet of paper, its corners crisp, the ink dark. He read aloud, voice steady, almost ritualistic. To my beloved family, I leave my home, my personal belongings, and all my financial assets to my children, equally divided. My parents nodded, smiling faintly, a tight, rehearsed smile. Relief and triumph mingled in their expressions. But I noticed my grandmother's hand clutching the bed sheet, knuckles white, as if resisting an invisible force. And that's it, I asked softly, trying to keep my voice even. The lawyer hesitated, then carefully placed the first sheet aside. He pulled the second envelope from his briefcase. There is another envelope, he said quietly, which contains instructions your grandmother wanted preserved. She requested that it be opened in a neutral setting and only in the presence of all parties, but she also indicated it could reveal matters that might change the distribution or understanding of her intentions. My mother's hand froze midair. My father's smile faltered. Neither of them had expected this, and for the first time I saw a flicker of fear cross their faces. You don't have to open it. The lawyer continued, his tone gentle but firm. It is entirely your choice. Grandma's eyes bored into mine. It is choice enough if you decide to listen. I hesitated, torn between respect for her wishes and the almost unbearable suspense of knowing there was more. Something my parents clearly didn't want revealed. My pulse raced as I watched them, their composure slipping under the weight of the second envelope's presence. My father's voice, low and controlled, finally broke the silence. We'll leave that for later. Let's not cause any unnecessary distress now. But I could see it. My mother's lips quivered ever so slightly, a shadow of guilt crossing her face. And my father, his eyes, though masked by practiced calm, held a flash of panic, subtle but unmistakable. The lawyer carefully resealed the second envelope and placed it back in his briefcase. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, a mixture of curiosity, dread, and anger. This envelope, this small, unassuming piece of paper held the truth, and my parents had tried to shield it from view, almost as if fearing its very words. Grandma sighed softly, closing her eyes for a moment. The truth always finds a way, she murmured. Even in silence, even in shadow. I sat there, my mind racing. I didn't yet know how I would uncover what had been hidden, but I knew one thing, I would. And when I did, everything would change. It happened later that evening, after the hospital had quieted, and the hum of machines and whispers had dwindled to a low murmur. My parents had stepped out to speak in hushed tones in the hallway, leaving me alone with Grandma. The second envelope, sealed and heavy with secrets, lay on the edge of the bedside table. Its presence was magnetic, almost demanding attention. I hesitated. I knew the rules: respect, patience, decorum. But something deep inside me, a mix of grief, curiosity, and simmering unease, pulled me closer. I slid the envelope toward me, feeling its weight in my hands, imagining the truths it contained. My pulse raced. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice whispering, "Don't let them cloud your heart, even now." With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, folded neatly, inked in Grandma's careful hand. I unfolded it slowly, each crease crackling like the brittle bones of a secret long hidden. The words hit me like a thunderclap. To my dearest grandchild, if you are reading this, It means my fears were justified. Your parents, your mother and father, have rewritten my will on the night I passed in their own interest, not mine. They thought they could deceive everyone, but truth always finds its way. You are the only one I trust to see this, guard it, and when the time is right. Justice will follow. My hands shook. I read and reread the lines, as though by sheer repetition I could make them less real. But the betrayal was undeniable. The people who had raised me, who had promised to guide me, had chosen greed over integrity. My heart twisted with a mixture of sorrow and rage. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to scream to confront them, but I couldn't. Grandma's instructions were clear: patience, observation, understanding. She had prepared me for this subtly in her final hours. I sank into the chair beside her bed, clutching the letter. I could hear my parents' muffled voices outside, but they sounded distant, irrelevant. Their betrayal wasn't just about money or inheritance. It was about trust, about the foundation of our family, cracked and splintered in the shadows of that hospital room. Then I noticed something else, another sheet, tucked inside the envelope, detailed instructions. Grandma had divided her estate fairly in her own way, leaving me the personal letters, journals, and a small property she had always cherished. The inheritance my parents had claimed her home, her savings, was supposed to be shared equally, yes, but not in the way they had orchestrated. They had manipulated her final moments, reshaping her legacy for their gain. Anger surged sharp and bitter, but beneath it was something else, a calm resolve. I understood, suddenly, the power of the second envelope. It wasn't just evidence of betrayal, it was a blueprint for justice. Grandma had given me the tools I needed, the knowledge to reclaim what was rightfully hers, and in doing so, protect the integrity of our family's truth. I heard the door open. My parents returned, their expressions carefully neutral, though I could see the subtle pride in their steps, their relief at thinking they had won. I kept the envelope close to my chest, hidden beneath the folds of my sweater. Everything all right? My mother asked, her voice syrupy with false concern. I nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at my lips. Yes, just sitting with Grandma. My father's gaze lingered on me, and for a fleeting moment, I thought he sensed the shift, the change in me, the weight of knowledge I now carried. But he said nothing, and my mother's smile remained brittle, forced. Grandma, lying back against her pillows, whispered softly, almost imperceptibly, "Remember patience, and they will unravel themselves." I swallowed hard. Her words settled over me like a cloak, heavy but protective. The betrayal had been laid bare, raw and unyielding, but so had the path forward. I would watch, I would wait, and when the moment came, I would act. In that quiet room, surrounded by shadows and the fading light, I felt the first flicker of empowerment. The second envelope had broken my heart, yes, but it had also given me purpose. And when I finally confronted my parents, it would not be with anger alone, it would be with the quiet, unyielding justice that Grandma had entrusted to me. The weeks that followed were a careful dance. I moved through my parents' carefully constructed world like a shadow, silent, observant, patient. I had Grandma's letter tucked safely away, a compass guiding me, and I learned quickly that power was rarely in sudden confrontation. True influence came from knowledge, from timing, from letting others reveal their own misdeeds. At family gatherings, I smiled politely, engaged in the small talk they expected, but my mind was elsewhere. I asked subtle questions, hinted at financial arrangements, and watched as their composure faltered under the weight of suspicion. The tighter they tried to hold onto their facade, the more it began to crumble. One evening, my mother invited extended family over for what she called a celebration of Grandma's life. The house smelled of fresh flowers and roasted meat, laughter bouncing off the walls, a picture of harmony. But I had other plans. I carried with me a folder of Grandma's journals and letters, photocopies discreetly made before anyone could notice. The first moment came unexpectedly. A cousin, curious about Grandma's estate, asked casually, "So, who's really in charge of the inheritance?" My mother faltered, her carefully prepared smile slipping. "Oh, well, everything's been settled according to her wishes." I leaned forward, voice soft but deliberate. "Actually, there's more to it. Grandma left very specific instructions, didn't she, about who should receive what? And who tried to change her mind at the very last moment? The room went still. My father's hand tightened around his glass, his knuckles white. My mother's smile vanished entirely. Eyes darted around, whispers ignited. I continued, holding up one of Grandma's letters, though not fully revealing it. Grandma trusted me to see this, to make sure her wishes were honored. She left a clear record of what she intended, and it seems that some people attempted to rewrite her legacy while she was still breathing. Gasps filled the room. My parents' faces had gone pale, their carefully crafted image shattered in a single moment. No accusations from me, only the truth, gently laid bare. The whispers swelled into murmurs of doubt and judgment, and I watched as their pride cracked into panic. Later, when we were alone, my mother confronted me. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, trembled. How could you? I met her gaze steadily. I didn't take anything from you. I didn't need to. The truth takes care of itself. You rewrote Grandma's will. You betrayed her, and in doing so, you betrayed yourself. My father remained silent, but I could see the defeat in his eyes. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated the weight of a promise made to someone they thought powerless in her final moments. Over the following months, I meticulously ensured that Grandma's true intentions were honored. The house, the savings, the personal letters, all were redistributed according to her wishes. My parents were left with their public shame, the whispers of relatives and friends reminding them of their greed. They retained material possessions, but the respect, trust, and moral authority they had wielded for years crumbled. And yet, the revenge was not purely punitive. I had learned from Grandma that justice was sweetest when paired with integrity. I did not humiliate them beyond what truth and circumstance demanded. I acted with patience, precision, and quiet authority, letting their own choices reveal their character. In the end, I found a kind of peace I had not known before. Grandma's words had guided me: patience, observation, and understanding. I had honored her memory not only by reclaiming what was hers, but by upholding the values she had fought to protect. Sometimes, late at night, I would read her letters again, feeling her presence beside me. A soft smile would play on my lips, knowing she had anticipated everything, trusted me completely, and empowered me to act with both justice and compassion. My parents had rewritten the will to serve themselves, but they had underestimated one crucial factor: the granddaughter who had listened, who had watched, who had learned. And in the quiet reckoning that followed, I realized something profound. The sweetest revenge is never loud, never vengeful. It is simply the restoration of truth, guided by love and tempered with patience. Grandma's final gift was not money, not property, not even the letters themselves. It was the lesson that integrity can outlast greed, and that those who betray others ultimately betray themselves. And as I closed her final journal, I whispered a quiet thank you, feeling the warmth of her presence in the room, steady, wise, and eternal.